Please welcome board member of Women in Product, Nguyen.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of our 2020 Women in Product Conference. I hope you enjoyed yesterday's keynote, breakouts, and interactive sessions. I just loved hearing Bianca Gates' story about starting Birdies. What an incredible inspiration she is. And I also loved hearing Kriti and Laura's stories, as they both showed us 2 very different paths to product leadership. So today's keynotes focus on our theme, resilience in the face of change. We're going to start with 2 women who represent the epitome of resilient leadership. Meg Whitman in conversation with Fidji Simo. So Meg practically needs no introduction. Meg is the CEO of Quibi, a mobile media tech platform bringing together the best of Silicon Valley and Hollywood. And prior to Quibi, Meg served as the CEO of Hewlett-Packard. And at the start of my own career in product 20 years ago, I had the incredible honor and privilege of seeing Meg's leadership in action when she was the CEO of eBay. Fidji Simo is the head of the Facebook app and a co-founder and emeritus board member of Women in Product, and someone who I'm so proud to call a friend. So welcome Meg and Fidji to our Women in Product stage.
How are you? Good. How are you doing, Meg? Hi, everyone. I'm so honored and excited to have Meg Whitman join us today at the Women in Product Conference. Thank you so much, Meg, for being here. We're very happy. Before we jump into some questions, I just want to take a moment to talk a little bit about Meg and her incredible background, even though she's a woman that needs no introduction. Meg is a pioneer in various industries, whether it be consumer goods, entertainment, tech, or an intersection of the 3. She has held multiple leading roles at major companies. She's a disruptor, trailblazer, and fearless leader who has really redefined business innovation, especially for women. Meg is currently CEO of Quibi, which is a mobile-first media technology platform bringing together the best of Silicon Valley and Hollywood by delivering short-form entertainment all the way to our smartphones. And before Quibi, she served as CEO of Hewlett-Packard Enterprise and President and CEO for the Hewlett-Packard Company, as well as President and CEO of eBay, where I had the chance to work for her, where she oversaw its growth from 30 employees and 4 million in annual revenue to more than 15,000 employees and 8 billion in annual revenue. She has also held executive level positions at Procter & Gamble, Hasbro, Walt Disney Company, and Bain & Company. And Meg continues to give back to the community through her position as the national board chair of Teach for America. And she also sits on the board of Procter & Gamble, where she began her career. So you name it, this woman has done it all. And I'm beyond honored to be virtually sitting next to this remarkable woman today. So welcome, Meg.
Well, thank you so much, and I'm sorry we're not together in person, but maybe another time.
Maybe another time. Exactly. So as previously mentioned, you have worked in several industries, you've held a variety of roles, all while finding great success. So I have a very general question to get us started, which is like, what has driven you throughout your career and what continues to motivate you as you enter this next chapter of your life?
Well, I didn't quite know what I wanted to do when I graduated from Harvard Business School. I mean, I knew I wanted to be in business, but if you had asked me, in 1979 when I graduated from Harvard Business School, do you want to be a CEO? I would have said, no, I can't even imagine. And so, in some ways, like all of us, our career has evolved and, you do well at one job and then you get another chance. And I think as I distill what I love to do, I love to figure things out. I love to solve problems. I love to figure out how business models work, how consumers react to things. I'm much more a consumer gal than a B2B, expert. And when I went to HP, I had to learn B2B. I'd never run a B2B sales force. I didn't know anything about it. But that idea of constantly learning, constantly getting better, constantly understanding and figuring things out is what motivates me. And I like hard challenges too. Sort of the harder in some ways, the better. And maybe that's just part of my personality.
I love that after all of your accomplishments, you're still focused on learning. So let's talk a little bit about your time at eBay. You were named CEO in 1998, if I remember correctly, and you obviously helped eBay cross numerous milestones and establish it as a household name. So what was it like taking a startup and really turning it into a major corporation? And then as a follow-up question, what made you decide to return to the startup world by joining eBay?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you a funny story about eBay. So I got a call from a headhunter, and I was at Hasbro. I was running the preschool division. Barney, Arthur, Teletubbies, my personal favorite, Mr. Potato Head. I got a call from a headhunter who said, we want you to go to this no-name startup. We were just doing email back in 1998. I mean, it's hard to remember. And I said, and I knew I didn't want to make him mad. I thought, I definitely don't want this job, but I might want the next job. And he said, well, I just want you to go meet the 26-year-old founder who you know well, Pierre Omidyar. And I said, okay, fine. And the night before I got on a plane to California, I was living in Boston at the time. I said, I better go to the website, right? I've never even been to this website. And when the founder says, what do you think about our website? I probably need to have an answer to that. And I go on, and eBay was called Auction Web. It was in black and white in 3 parts. And the first part was Pam Omidyar's, she was running the Tufts Alumni Association in San Francisco. So a third of the website was the Alumni Association. The other third was every link on the internet to the Ebola virus, because Pierre was totally ahead of his time around pandemics. And
Wow.
the middle was Auction Web. And crazy enough, Fidji, the URL was ebay.com, but the company was called Auction Web. And I'm like, this is a disaster. I cannot believe I'm getting on a plane to do this. If I could get out of this, I would. But ended up going out and meeting Pierre, and just was so impressed with him. He was, as you know, at the time, 26 going on 40. I mean, mature and thoughtful. And at the end of the day, I said, you know what? I called my husband from the San Francisco airport, and I said, we should definitely do this. And so we moved 2 new jobs, 2 kids to California to just do this completely, baby startup. But it was growing at 70% compound monthly growth rate. And so really, in some ways, it was just putting enough structure in place to not squish the entrepreneurial, feeling that eBay had. It's like fly fishing. I happen to be a fly fisherman. You got to put the fly right in front of the fish. And so just enough structure, but then to let this thing grow. And you're right, we took it from a startup to a grown-up. And, a lot of important decisions along the way, but a few really major ones, which was trust and safety. How do we make sure that what we want, what we think should be on this app, our site is on the app and not anything else. Big bet, you might remember on eBay Motors, we were the largest car dealer in the world. A big bet on international. We knew right away that international was huge because people were buying and selling items from eBay in American English in US dollars. I said, okay, well, it's like, the French are doing that. Maybe it would be a good idea to do eBay France, which of course is where we found it. So it was just, you have to reinvent yourself really fast, because what I was doing when I joined shouldn't be what I was doing 3 months in, 6 months in. So I was constantly saying, am I the right person to be doing this? Hiring ahead of the curve. You might remember Brian Sweetie, who we hired as CMO, who had been the CMO of Pepsi. You might think, wow, that was sort of over hiring for the job. But in fact, eBay grew to him. eBay grew to Maynard Webb. I hired people to whom the company could grow, as opposed to hire someone who was perfect at that time. And that was part of the success. So, and nothing better than doing what we did at eBay. It was super fun. And so when I had a chance to do another raw startup, and this was even newer than eBay because I was employee number 1 at Quibi, I said, you know what? I've done huge companies like Keynote. I've done little companies like eBay, and this is a chance to do a raw startup again. And I said it would be really fun, and I thought the idea was a good one.
That makes sense. We look at careers like yours, and sometimes we forget that they involve taking massive risk, like moving your entire family based on a website that didn't look like much. And I'm curious, when you say, I knew I had to do this, what in your gut told you this was the right call? Was it people? How did you make that decision, and how can you help us make the right calls?
So I think you have to have a little bit of a mental model of what makes great productive. You won't always be right. But what I saw at eBay was the following. I'm a big believer that if you can give consumers real features and functionality, something they couldn't do before. So I think of P&G, whiter whites, fresher breath, cleaner teeth. I mean, the P&G products are fundamentally better products, and they let you do something you couldn't do before. So I look for features and functionality, and then I look for an emotional connection to the product. And often you won't have both. You'll have features and functionality that no one really cares, or you'll have emotional connection, but it's not really different. I mean, look at Facebook. It's the same thing. It's real features and functionality, and people really care. And I saw that in that interview with Pierre, because he told me people have met their best friends on eBay, and people make their livelihood on eBay. And frankly, we made inefficient markets efficient because, collectibles, which were the part, were fundamentally a regional business before. And so it fit my mental framework. And then I think, so you've got to have like a mental framework of what makes businesses successful. I also really was focused on the financial model that started, as you will recall, with an 80% gross margin. Better to start 80% with an 80% gross margin than a 20% gross margin. And then you have to say, my view is you have to say, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? If I go do this and it doesn't work out, like how bad is it? And I ultimately said, and my husband was great here. He said, listen, let's take a chance. What's the worst that can happen? You go get another job. And so you have to have some self-confidence that you can jump from something to something else. And, and then I think there's certain DNA about risk-taking. I think you just have to say, you know what, I'm going to take a leap off the high dive. And I did the same thing with HP. Everyone told me I should not go to HP. Everybody. And I said, you know what? I think I can make a difference here to an iconic American company. But it was pretty risky, too. I would argue in some ways that HP was more risky than eBay.
Interesting. What did you learn from working at these larger companies like HP that you were able to apply to more of your entrepreneurial ventures? Do you feel like having that background was actually very important?
I will tell you my time at HP, I'm coming back to a learner. Every organization I work for, I learned something. And I learned a couple of things at HP that were really good. One is you can learn almost any industry. I mean, honestly, Fidji, we bought a lot of servers at eBay, but I didn't actually know very much about that industry. And so, you just got to get in, dig in, don't be afraid to ask questions and just figure it out. The second thing that is across all industries is you're only as good as your team. You know that, right? Right person, right job, right time, right attitude, and you are home free. So that's really important. And then I would say, what I learned at HP? I learned about how to do a turnaround, how to rally a large company behind a new goal. There were, when I got there, 325,000 employees at HP and 80,000 contractors. We had 7 major lines of business, operated in 190 countries, and sold to 250,000 cars. I mean, the scale was enormous. And so I had to learn how to communicate to very large groups of people. And the thing that really helped me with that was running for governor of California. Yeah, actually in a funny way for success at HP. Because, we tend to, in companies, talk with, left brain and, like analytics and, there's a premium on knowing everything you need to know about the business. In politics, it's actually about the stories you tell. And I learned that when I ran for office. So when I came to HP, I said, I've got to rally 325,000 people around this vision. And it was the stories I told, not necessarily the data that could rally them.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I can definitely relate to storytelling being really important. So let's talk about Quibi a little bit. You were named the first employee of CEO of Quibi in 2018. Again, that was unexpected and a big risk that you took. And on top of that, you were thrown some unforeseen obstacles this year, right before Quibi was set to launch with this pandemic. So I'm curious, how would you talk about your Quibi experience and what helped you through this challenge and some of the lessons you learned there?
Well, I have to say it was great fun to plan something from the ground up. One of the things that is great about planning something from the ground up is you get to set the culture. And one of the things that I know is cultures are often founder DNA. They are, Pierre, was a libertarian. A lot of his DNA was at eBay. And these companies where the founders stay, they get imprinted early. And Jeffrey and I said, you know what? we're partners in this, we need to just take the little pledging team offsite and say, what do we want to stand for? What are the core values? Because if you don't manage them, the culture will take off by itself, and you might not like what you actually get at the other end. So we set out, basically 5 values, and one of which you'll be quite interested because it's so timely right now is one of our core values is be the audience. And that meant being super customer centric, but in front of the camera, behind the camera, at Quibi, how do we reflect the audience, which in the United States is the most diverse generation in America? So we have 47% women at all levels of the company. 49% of the people at Quibi identify as people of color. And it has made us stronger. It has made us so much stronger. So that was an early fun thing. And so building this and thinking about what the content ought to be and what the platform ought to be. I mean, for women in product management played a huge role in the app that now has a 4.6 rating on the App Store, 4.1 rating on Google Play. We're in the top 10 entertainment apps since the beginning. Product management was hugely, hugely important because product management sits, particularly at our company, at the intersection of content and technology. And product management has to be the translators. Okay, those content folks, they don't really understand what the tech guys do, but the tech guys don't really understand content. So how do we make these work together? So that's been really fun. No question, launching in a pandemic was sort of a bummer for us because we were designed to be mobile only, not mobile first, mobile only is how we created the app, mobile only on the go. Sort of those in-between moments of commuting and waiting in line and things like that. So our use case was severely compromised, in fact, still is. So it's now been, how do you pivot? What do you try? You have to just say, the environment is the environment. How do we make it successful in the current environment? And, strategically, what are we trying to do here? So it's been intellectually fascinating. There are days where a good idea. Okay. But again, I think, running for public office, because, the press, certainly at the beginning of the summer, was pretty negative on Quibi. And I think for people who had not been as experienced as Jeffrey and I, that might have been really hard for us. I think, frankly, it was harder for our organization than for us because, Jeffrey had been through DreamWorks. I'd run for governor, going to HP. I mean, the press was horrible. I don't know if you remember when I came to HP. And you just go, you know what? I got to learn from this. But the press does not define, the strategy doesn't define who we are. And so, frankly, experience, pattern recognition, and a pretty thick skin has been helpful. So we just, we just keep going and we make it better every day. We release a new app to the App Store every 2 weeks. A great balance, I think, of a lot of innovation and experimentation without burning out the product management team, which I think is one of the things that great product leaders need to do. Because the demand, my favorite person at eBay, Maynard Webb, who was our CTO, used to say, the demand generation for product features will always exceed demand fulfillment.
Good point. So, we have a lot of women in the audience who are considering this move from product management to entrepreneur. And I actually think that it's so important that we have more of the people who are leading the innovation and creating the companies of tomorrow be women so that we can shape that future. And that's a big part actually of why we created Women in Product. We wanted the people who build to represent the audience, as you said. What would you recommend to women who are hesitating in getting on the entrepreneurship path? Who are, the things we usually hear, we don't know how to combine that with having a family. We don't know if the roller coaster ride is for us. What would you recommend for women in that case?
Well, I do think know yourself, is an important thing. Everyone, particularly, I think now, coming out of the business schools and for women in their 20s and 30s, there's tremendous pressure to go be an entrepreneur. And by the way, I have loved it, but it is not for everybody. The roller coaster, the highs are higher, the lows are lower, and it's a more risky thing to do. So know yourself. Is that going to be a fit with your personality? I like to say that being an entrepreneur, you have to be highly tolerant of ambiguity. There's not a roadmap of what you're supposed to go do. There's not a manual. One of the things I loved when I started at P&G, there was training. Okay, here is how you become a great brand assistant brand manager, and brand manager. Like there was a very well-defined path. I love that. I have to say, like, okay, like give me the manual and I will go. And in a startup, right? And so tolerance for ambiguity, figuring things out. But if you think that your personality is well suited to that and you want to try being an entrepreneur or being part of a startup team, I say go for it. There's nothing more fun than building an eBay. There's nothing more fun than starting something from scratch. You get to build your own culture. You get to do things that, how many times at big companies have you said, no, I wish it could be this way? Well, when you're in a startup, it can be that way. And so I think go for it. I think it's super fun. And, the record shows that, most startups don't work out. So you just have to be, okay, well, I'll go find another job, but you will be better for it. I mean, honestly, I would say I have learned a tremendous amount in the last 2 years that I didn't know. And, I've been doing this for 40 years. And so that has to be, part of the journey. I think, the end result is super important, but the journey is as important.
To close this out, let's talk a little bit more about the future. You talked about the tech industry. You've actually recently written that this is the defining industry of the last 30 or 40 years, and it will be the defining industry of the next 30 to 40 years. So what do you believe is the future of technology, and how do you expect the tech landscape to change, especially in light of the very unusual year we've had?
Yeah. So listen, I think I bet everyone on this in this forum agrees with this. I mean, it has been the defining industry of the last 50 years. Think about it. I mean, it's just remarkable. And if you broadly define technology, you could argue that it's been longer than that. I mean, think about the Ford Motor Company and what Henry Ford did by inventing the Model T. I mean, in some ways, that was as technology, led revolution as what we would more narrowly define as technology. And I think we're at the beginning of lots and lots of discoveries. And whether that is quantum computing, high performance computing, AI, machine learning, driverless cars. I would argue that genomics, in many ways, biotech is a technology industry as well. And I think we're at just the beginning of immunotherapy and, a whole set of advances in healthcare that, have been a long time coming. I do think ultimately, there hasn't been much changes, for example, in the rate of the cure of brain tumors. I happen to know this because I'm married to a neurosurgeon. I think immunotherapy is sort of this next big breakthrough that is, in history time around the corner. So I do think it's, it's a brave new world. And I think we, understand things today that, we didn't even understand 5 years ago. I mean, think about, and you guys were on this early, but think about the power of algorithms. It's pretty remarkable. And the power of machine learning and, having machines read x-rays. They read x-rays better than humans read x-rays. And so I think that's a big part of the future. And frankly, from a U.S. perspective, I do think that as a country, we need to define what are the next big industries that are going to create a lot of jobs, that are going to employ a lot of people, not all of whom have to have an engineering degree or be college educated. And then I think the United States needs to say, we're going to own these markets. 3D printing. We're going to own these businesses, and we're going to be the leader in the world. And, listen, the competition is so much greater now with other countries. And I don't know if this has been your experience at Facebook. When I was at HP and at eBay, I used to have people from, Singapore and China and all these places come see me and say, hey, we really want the next R&D center for HP in Singapore. Yeah. And they made it really effective. And so I just think we have to have, I'm a longtime Republican. I'm now a registered independent, but industrial policy was a bad word for Republicans because it seemed like you were trying to manage the economy. I actually think we're kind of at the point where we got to decide what are these future industries, what's the future of tech, and then we got to set out to have the educational system, the retraining system, the internship and entrepreneurial training systems really help. I mean, look at Germany. Germany owns precision manufacturing. The labor cost in Germany is not any lower than it is in the United States of America. How we let precision manufacturing get away is beyond me. And go into any factory in America, virtually all the manufacturing machines are made in Germany. Shouldn't be. So I'm all about sort of thinking through what are those industries and then how do we prepare ourselves, our kids, for that great new world.
Yeah, I like your point on healthcare in particular, because this last year in particular has seen such a massive leap forward, where we've been talking about telemedicine for so long, but nothing was really happening because of so much resistance in the system, and we were pushed forward. And I think actually that's going to save lives at a much faster pace than the pace we were at before. So totally agree. Meg, this has been a wonderful conversation. I want to end with one question, which is very simple. We have a lot of women in the audience who want to reach the next level. Can you leave us with one final piece of advice that we can take with us to potentially aspire to a career like yours?
Oh, you're very nice. Thank you. I would say, let's see, I would say have courage. If I had to just distill one thing, have courage. Courage and confidence to know that you can do it and you can figure it out. It might not be immediate, there might be some sort of a gauntlet that you have to run, but you can figure it out and ask for help. Use colleagues, use friends, I'll give you one other piece of advice that I have actually learned from my partner, Jeffrey Katzenberg. I really think that creating and nurturing relationships over all the different things that you've done is super important. And I didn't do it. I had 2 kids. I was married to a neurosurgeon. But that connective tissue with people, with friends, is super important. And because it can give you courage, it can give you confidence, and it's just something that you want to have. And if I had to do it over again, I'd do a much better job of sort of keeping in touch with people and keeping my contacts up to date, and really reaching out. It's hard. Sometimes it's hard to do that because you've got busy lives and families and kids and all that. But I think it's really important.
Well, what a wonderful piece of advice to leave us with. Thank you so much. It's been such an honor to have you at this conference. So thanks for sharing your wisdom.
Well, thank you, Fidji, and congratulations on all your success. I mean, from a bright young girl out of college, one of the best colleges in France, to running the Facebook app. You go, girl. Congratulations.
It means a lot coming from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Meg and Fidji. I am just so inspired by their conversation. I love the stories of being bold, taking risks, and jumping into the hardest and most challenging opportunities, even if this means risking failure. But the possible reward and the journey that you embark on is almost always worth it. So even if you fail, as she says, you can always get another job. So thank you, Meg, for sharing your wisdom, stories, and putting everything into perspective for all of us. Our next speaker is Sunita Parbhu. Sunita is currently the head of product for CVKey. She's been a product leader throughout her career, from large B2B companies to startups focused on the future of work. Sunita is a product leader interested in tackling large and important challenges. Like many of us, she's a problem solver. And when COVID shut down international travel and brought life as we knew it to a halt, Sunita saw it as an opportunity. Sunita is such a force of nature. I'd love to have all of us welcome Sunita to the Women in Product stage. Welcome.
March 5th, 2020. I was so excited. I was with my kids and I was doing a little happy dance. I just booked a ticket for my dad to fly from New Zealand to San Francisco to come and hang out with me and the kids. COVID was the last thing on my mind. As I booked his economy class ticket from Auckland to SFO, it was vaguely in my mind. I kind of checked to make sure that there was an empty middle seat next to him. But other than that, mostly we were just excited about all the things that we were going to be doing together. 14 short days later, the whole world fell apart. In California, we were ordered to stay at home. People started to stockpile groceries. Our kids were sent home from school. The streets were empty. Suddenly, we were in a crisis. I ran to the grocery store. I picked up some pasta and some toilet paper. I came home. I sat down at my laptop, and I canceled my dad's flight. And then I looked for advice. And what they said was, hold tight. It will all be over soon. Be resilient and wait. But what is resilience? Resilience is more than just waiting and enduring and waiting for the hard things to pass. Resilience is also standing up and taking action. It's looking for solutions, even when the solutions don't appear to be there. It's getting out there and taking action, even if it's uncomfortable or hard. I do not want to sit on the sidelines and just wait. So when I heard about the CVKey project, I jumped at the chance to join. And the reason I was so intrigued about this project is this. It is crazy that we socially accept that in times of crisis, it's okay to give up individual rights in order to meet the greater good. In every crisis, we have chipped away at individual rights. Think back to the Patriot Act. In a few short days, we gave up tremendous freedoms, and those freedoms that we give up, we never get those back. And so I was so intrigued with what the CVKey project wanted to do. We were looking at trying to break this trade-off. What if we could build a solution for this crisis in this great time of need? What if we could build solutions that achieved the greater good to serve in this time of crisis while protecting individual rights and doing no harm? The CVKey project was founded by Brian McClendon, who was the founder of Google Earth and Google Maps, and he put together this remarkable team of volunteers from product, technology, the health industry, and policy, all around this mission of trying to build these kinds of products. Our first app allows individuals to assess their risk for COVID and see where they are on a spectrum. And based on where they are on a spectrum, they get information about where they can and cannot go. And they use the CVKey app as a pass, as a way to scan into places based on where they are on that spectrum of risk. But all of this is done on a foundation of complete privacy. There's no sharing of personal information or personal health status. What I've learned about building privacy-first products is mind-blowing. It is completely crazy. It is so counterintuitive to how we have been building products these last 15 plus years. So I wanted to give you a cheat sheet of sort of 3 things that you need to know. The first thing is data. Where on earth is this data? Like, where the heck is it? Today, the data is in the cloud. There are these centralized stores of data connected to the internet that carry all of the user information. That's exactly what makes them such a rich target for hackers and breaches. In a privacy-first architecture, the data is entirely on the user's phone. There is no cloud store anywhere which stores user information. The second thing, which will completely blow your mind, is tracking. We have been insane product managers. We have become experts at using user information to build remarkable products. Right? We use it to make personalized experience, to create relevance, to get insights about where we should invest. We use it to deliver content and have the most interesting targeted advertising. Right? We are on fire when it comes to using user information. In a privacy-first architecture, we don't track any user interactions. We don't know what they're clicking on, what they're interested in, what their intent is. Think about that. When a user uses the CVKey app, if they're looking at information about mental health services in times of COVID, if they're using a CV pass to go to work, and then later on using a CV pass to go to church, all of the user's actions and interests stay on their phone. There's no server anywhere where CVKey knows what the user is interested in. Christian is the other product manager on our team. This is how we looked back in April, when engineering came to us and said, "Hey, Christian, Sunita, we just wanted to check in with you. We've done our privacy design, and we just want to make sure that you fully understood that you're not going to get any user information to work with. right? You're not even going to know how many unique users you have. If there's a building where the CV Pass is being used and there's 10 scans for the day, you are not going to know if that was 10 individual people or if it was just the same person going in and out 10 times. Right? We looked at each other and it blew our minds. Right? This is completely unheard of. And then the third thing that I want to leave you with here is location. So our product is particularly about using it in the real world to go from place to place and use the CV Pass to get in without revealing your personal information. So how do we make sure that we're not tracking location? One of the ways is that we don't use third-party services that we typically rely on. So we don't use Google Firebase or Crashlytics, which might inadvertently leave some trace or evidence of what users are doing. The second thing is we generate completely unique QR codes every time a CV Pass is created, every time a CV Pass is used. And those CV Passes are not linkable to each other. So there's no way to sort of piece together the history of where a user has been and what they've been doing. So we wanted to know, will it work? So this fall, colleges reopened. And we were so excited that they were opening. Right? Thousands of students were coming back. And as soon as they opened, they closed. Right? So many colleges shut down in as little as 9 days. The University of Kansas opened with its 30,000 students. But it stayed open. Why is that? I'm proud to say that one of the reasons that they stayed open is because they used the CVKey app as part of their reopening strategy. We started working with them in June with a tiny little pilot project of less than 1,000 users, just the graduate students and faculty who were on campus in the summer. And they worked with us to iterate on our design. So when they started to think about reopening this fall, they implemented CVKey as an integral part of their reopening strategy. And they rolled out our app to all 30,000 users, from undergraduates to graduates to faculty, lecturers, cafeteria staff, janitorial staff, everybody. And there's no way that they could have got adoption by 30,000 users without this fundamental privacy promise already in place. So here we are in October, and we are in a remarkably different place than we were in April, right? It's so exciting where we are right now, right? In April, we had this vision, this belief that maybe we could build a solution that would help society to reopen safely while protecting individual rights and freedoms. We didn't even know if it could be done. Now, we have evidence that it is possible to build consumer products at scale, get adoption and success on a completely privacy-first basis. Right? We have proof that what was possible is entirely doable. And this opens us up to an entire world of new products and applications that can be built that break that trade-off between doing what's good for the group and doing what's right for the individual. It's exactly the kind of opportunity that product managers love, right? There are so many things we don't know about building products for this new privacy-first architecture. There are so many big problems to be solved, and we don't know how we're going to do them. It's the kind of thing where product managers roll up their sleeves and just get started. I've been reflecting on the resilience of our team as well, and where that came from. How is it that you work on something so hard under such difficult conditions? And the answer is, it comes down to the mission. You can only work this hard if what you're doing has meaning. It has to matter. Right? In the middle of this pandemic, in addition, in California, we had these crazy wildfires. I got a message on Slack one day from one of the engineers. She said, "I'm being evacuated, I'm going offline." We wished her well, and we left it at that. The next day, she was in San Francisco, and she was logging in and checking in code. Right? She was so committed to getting this done and getting this right and making a difference that here she was in the middle of a pandemic and a wildfire, she was checking in her code. And I think that is indicative and true of everybody that has worked on the CVKey project. So resilience comes from having important work to do. I want to go back to where I started, which is resilience is not just enduring and waiting for the hard times to pass. Right? Endurance has to be standing up and taking action and looking for solutions, being part of the solution and doing everything you can to move things forward. Frankly, I did not want to be here today on Zoom talking to you. I really wanted to be with you in person. This conference, one of the best things about it is that we interact in real life and we make these amazing connections. We have these amazing conversations. And I sincerely hope that this time next year, we will be back together in person. But for now, we want to make this as authentic and useful for you. I really hope to see you in the live interactive session, hear about what's been going on for you, hear your thoughts, answer any questions that I can. Right? Would love to see you and talk to you one-on-one. I want to take down the green screen and be real. Really looking forward to talking to you. I hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Sunita. I'm feeling so inspired after hearing your keynote. It's true that if you're working on something that has a mission, that you can persevere even under the most difficult of conditions. Resilience comes from having important work to do. And when the work that you do has meaning, everything is put into perspective and you push through all the hard stuff. You live each day with purpose and with joy. So our next speaker has had a front row seat to the changes and the challenges in the media business as a result of technology. Alexandra Hardiman joined the New York Times in 2006 and spent a decade in a number of senior product roles. In 2016, she joined Facebook as head of news products, and 2 years later, she joined The Atlantic as their chief business and product officer. Subsequently, she returned to her roots at the New York Times in 2019 in her current role as chief product officer. Alex is the epitome of resilience and commitment to great journalism. Welcome to the stage, Alex.
4 years ago, after a decade at the Times, I joined Facebook. The Facebook job was the most demanding role of my career to date, and I accepted it with the expectation that my wonderful husband, Brian, would actively and enthusiastically parent our toddler and newborn. But then just weeks into the new job, Brian was incapacitated by a mysterious brain disorder that rendered him unable to interact with our sons. Resilience means different things to different people. It's incredibly important now when our entire country is striving for some form of progress. But when my husband got sick, was I resilient? I don't know. But what I do know is that it led me to make several important decisions. I decided to seek purpose. I decided not to let fear govern my decisions. And I decided I would endeavor to lead with honesty and generosity. And that has turned out to be my recipe for resilience. Today, I want to talk about resilience in life and in the journalism industry. My husband is the love of my life, but about a year ago, I had a chance to get back together with the second love of my life, the New York Times. I knew I'd grown a lot in my 3.5 years at Facebook and The Atlantic, and before we got back together, I had to find out if the Times had grown too. During my years leading the Times' mobile product team, I sometimes faced skepticism, even resistance. Eventually, I was empowered to push for the change we needed. And when I finally left for Facebook, the Times was leading with mobile across our journalism, product, and revenue efforts. If I came back to be chief product officer, would I face renewed skepticism and resistance? Or were they willing to invest in our future together? Had they really embraced product as the engine of our growth? Company leaders and I spent several months in what amounted to couples therapy. And in the end, we decided the relationship could work. Now, I knew I was returning to an industry in crisis. The advertising-based business model that long supported American newsrooms had collapsed, leaving news organizations struggling to pay for original reporting and causing the rapid loss of more than half the journalism jobs in our country. Meanwhile, as news consumption moved to platforms, the direct relationship between journalist and reader that is essential for maintaining trust and loyalty had been lost. And yet, although I was returning to an industry in crisis, I was joining a company that has enjoyed a sustained period of growth. The Times has always had a strong mission to seek the truth and to help people understand the world. That never wavered. But after years of timidity, we began succeeding when we embraced change and stopped being afraid. Against groupthink that insisted all information wants to be free, the Times put up a paywall in 2011. Many predicted it would lead to our downfall. The Huffington Post called for our publisher to resign. But we didn't listen to the naysayers. And today we have more than twice as many subscribers than we've ever had in our history, even in the heyday of print. Last quarter, for the first time, more of our revenue came from digital than from print, a once unthinkable milestone. The Times today is a thriving, digital-first, subscription-first, resilient business. But still, when company leaders and I were in our therapy sessions, we also knew we needed to go further. And in this next phase of our relationship, we're tackling some big questions. How can the Times become a world-class digital product and technology operation in addition to a world-class journalism company? How can Silicon Valley-level ambition enhance a brand as established as the Times? How can we keep reinventing ourselves and our products again and again? There's no denying how far we've come. Reporters today know they get a wider audience for their journalism from a single push notification than from landing on the front page of the newspaper. And that reflects a major cultural shift. We've reinvented our news products with live briefings, visual and data-driven storytelling, audio, TV, AR, VR, and more. And we're creating new value beyond news with products that help people play games, cook, shop, and listen. Along the way, we've built a more equitable workplace. That's something we're unafraid to say is core to our mission. Women now make up 51% of leadership positions at the Times. We have a female CEO, CGO, CPO, it's me. And together we'll lead the company in this next period of transformation and growth. Today, a majority of new hires are women, and very importantly, 43% of new hires identify as people of color. But the path to a more diverse New York Times required some resilience too. Here's one example. When I was pregnant with my first son in 2013, I learned the Times didn't have a parental leave policy. Instead, I could apply for disability leave at partial pay, filling out a form that required me to list the date and location of my accident. This wasn't just frustrating, it was dissonant. At the same time I was filling out my accident report, our reporters were covering California's expansion of paid family leave and its many economic benefits. So in 2015, I joined with 4 other female leaders at the Times to treat this challenge like a new product opportunity. We marshaled insights, benchmarked competitors, proposed a broad set of policy changes, and emphasized the business upside. It didn't take long for our leadership, especially our now CEO, Meredith Kopit-Levien, to embrace and expand paid leave for all new parents. It has made us truer to our values, better leaders, and more resilient. Which brings me back to today, my second chapter with the Times, and how we've been able to confront the crises that have unfolded in 2020. Over the last few years, we've become a much more ambitious product operation. We've increased our speed, flexibility, and collaboration with the newsroom. We're now able to ship at the pace of news, which is a huge advantage in today's news cycle. And this agility showed in our response to the pandemic. We reprioritized our roadmap to transform in a matter of weeks. And we've found that leading with ambition and empathy has launched a virtuous circle. We made our most important coronavirus coverage free to all. We built a pioneering public data set of US coronavirus cases. We made our internal safety guidance for reporting available to journalists worldwide. We launched new live formats and other novel storytelling tools to make our journalism as accessible as possible. The Times' emphasis on value-driven work, commitment to employee quality of life, and digital inventiveness have made this difficult era feel not only possible, but promising. it's also served the business. We now have more than 6.5 million paid subscriptions. In March, more than half of all Americans turned to the New York Times for our trusted, reliable news and information. Because ultimately, good journalism builds public resilience. It reassures people that they have insight into the systems that structure our lives, that those in power are being checked. Was I resilient when I took that new job and Brian got sick? I guess, looking back, I was. Today, I have a job I love in an industry I deeply believe in. I have a healthier husband who is able to work and parent again. And I'm relentlessly optimistic about the products that we, all of us at this conference, will build to get the country through our collective exhaustion, anxiety, and sickness. Having a mission matters. Being unafraid matters. Being honest and generous matters. It's how I've navigated through these last 7 months. And it's how the Times, now that we're back together, will build a strong and fearless future. Thank you.
Woo! Alexandra just demonstrated some serious resilience in a challenging and changing industry. I think she really illustrates how when we embrace technology, we can create positive change, and that the products that we develop and foster can have an enormous impact. I'd like to close by thanking all of the speakers this morning for sharing their stories and their insights. It's been such an honor and a privilege to have them here. And a huge thank you to all of our sponsors for making this conference possible. Please don't forget to visit them in the sponsor pavilion. So a couple of quick reminders before we break. First, the breakout sessions start at 10 a.m. Pacific time on all 4 stages. And second, there are also live interactive sessions beginning at 10 o'clock a.m. Pacific time, including one with our keynote speaker, Sunita. So thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning. I hope you are leaving this morning's sessions feeling absolutely inspired. And please do have an amazing Day 2 conference.